Welcome to the West Energy Podcast, powering your career. The energy transition plays a crucial role in Australia and the world's future, and the success of this shift hinges on the people driving it. This podcast will interview a diverse group of energy leaders to provide valuable perspectives on career development, leadership, navigating the energy transition, and discussing strategies to manage mental health and wellness in a high-pressure industry. I'm your host, David Smith, the founding partner and director of West Energy and West Recruitment. With over 20 years of recruitment experience and a team that specialises in recruitment across the whole energy supply chain, we're really excited to bring you this series. I'm grateful and excited to have Andy McCarthy join me today, or as the ads used to say, Andy from Gippsland Solar. Welcome.
Hi, Andy here from Gippsland Solar.
I had to use it, so I don't know if you saw that one coming, but I did
not.
There we go. Well, a good start. So Andy's the author of Here Comes the Sun, founder and former CEO of Gippsland Solar, and now an advisor and leader across the clean energy industry. As I shared on the intro, Andy, this podcast is all about talking with a diverse group of energy leaders across the energy supply chain. So exploring career journeys, leadership, the energy transition, mental health and well-being, and what it takes to thrive in this industry. We're also going to aim to challenge the idea that you have to have an engineering degree or background to have a career in energy. And overall, my hope is that these conversations will inspire, educate, motivate either anyone working in the industry or those looking to get into the sector. So a few things we want to achieve today. Let's see how we go.
Okay, let's get into it.
So to kick things off, Andy, can you tell our listeners a little bit about who you are in your own words?
I'm glad that you talked about lack of education not holding people back because I don't have much to speak of. I actually left school at 15. I was quite a troubled child. And I somehow fell into renewables as a 19-year-old, fell in love with the power of renewable energy and the ideas and opportunities it could create. And to be honest, that purpose that I felt about renewable energy really became my salvation, because I was heading on a track in life that, you wouldn't want to go down. And I was really, in hindsight, I was probably on a pretty self-destructive path. But once I discovered this passion for renewable energy, back in 2001, you never saw us installing megawatts and megawatts of solar across, buildings all over the country. But it was just the idea, the simplicity, the magic of renewables that just really struck me. So from the moment I connected my first solar panel as a 19-year-old, I just felt this purpose, this burning passion within me. And it's just kind of stayed with me for the last 25 years. And I married a Gippsland girl, moved down to the Latrobe Valley in 2010. And I thought everyone agreed that we were transitioning. I moved to the Valley and suddenly realized that everyone hated me down there.
So you were saying you grew up in Geelong, Cats Country?
Yeah. I used to make the banner every Thursday night for the Geelong Footy Club and then carry it out on the field for the games. But I married a Gippsland girl and we moved down there. She's a stronger personality than me, so we went where she wanted to go. Dropped our swags in the Latrobe Valley in a little town called Merboo North, population 2,000 people up in the hills. And decided that, of all things, I'd start a solar business in coal country back in 2010. And everyone hated me, and it took some time for us to start to enjoy a little bit of success. But there's a lot of tough moments in those early years.
Andy, to allow our audience to get to know you a little bit better, I've got 3 ice-breaking questions for you. If you could have dinner with anyone, past or present, who would it be and why?
I have to say Tiger Woods.
Okay.
There's something about the mental toughness and resilience and the ability to stay up for so long, regardless of what's happening in your life, I just find fascinating. So, I really want to understand how someone like that is built.
Yeah. I saw or read an article the other day about Tiger Woods and the longevity he had at number 1. Yeah. It's crazy. I had no idea.
It was like 10 years. Imagine those days you woke up, you got a headache, a sore knee, you can't be bothered. Your wife's about to leave you. But through all of those things, just managed to somehow just lock in and say, today I need to perform. It's quite an incredible thing. And that can be translated to business as well, I think.
Absolutely. What did you want to be when you were a kid?
A troublemaker.
Sounds like you achieved that.
I did. I front-loaded all my trouble in my early years, Dave. So, yes, I certainly achieved that objective.
Third and foremost, what's something most people don't know about Andy?
You'll find me every Saturday afternoon running around in the mud getting abused as a reserves umpire for the Merboo North Football Club. It's very humbling.
I bet.
Yeah.
So one of the things I've loved about this podcast, Andy, is hearing just how diverse people's paths into the energy industry has been. So far, we've had guests who are farmers, lawyers, ecologists, engineers, marketers, technologists, and a sportsman, all of who have become senior leaders in the energy industry. Now, your background was different to that all once again. For you, it was a conversation, as you said earlier, with a customer at the age of 19 that completely changed your direction. And you've called it the moment you found your passion. Can you run us through that moment and how that has sort of influenced where your career has ended up?
I think taking a step back further, I knew very early on that I was very different to most people around me. Now it's obviously called neurodivergence, but I think in the early 90s, it was really hard to fit in. I clearly had ADHD, undiagnosed for the first 12 years of my life, but there was something in me that clearly, made it very hard to settle. It made me very hard to focus. I spent all of my early teenage years just feeling like I didn't belong and that no one understood me. That really stays with me now. I still feel it as well. I still feel like an outsider. It was impossible to find a way to channel my energy. I had this burning energy inside me, this unrivaled sort of passion to do something. I didn't know what it was. I couldn't describe the energy that I felt inside me, but I knew it was there and I knew it was quite strong. It manifested itself in a lot of really ugly ways as a kid because I was just looking to lash out. I was looking to get attention. I was beaten remorselessly by kids in high school. They used to chase me every day and give me a beat down. That went on for years because I was just an easy target. And so I just spent, until I was 16, 17 years old, everywhere I went, I just didn't fit in, didn't belong, and I didn't know what my place was in the world. And so in the end, I left school, I went and got a full-time job and discovered a bit of discipline working in the real world. That was really good for me. But I found myself working for a battery company of all places. And it's kind of interesting because most people in this industry go from working in solar to battery storage.
The other way around.
And I went from battery storage. And then one day a guy came in who had a farm and he had a battery down the bottom of his paddock and he used to have to carry it up 500 meters back to the shed to charge it every time it went flat. He was really frustrated and he said, there must be an easier way. Obviously now it'd be pretty simple to get a solar panel. But back in 2001, we didn't really have much of an industry, hadn't really thought about it. And so I did some research. I thought, I can buy an 80-watt solar panel here. And I think it was $800 for an 80-watt panel. That was the wholesale price. I think we sold for $1,100 saying so. I thought, well, this is pretty good. So that was the first thing that appealed to me. Then I went out, I did some research, got a little bit of an info page on how to install it, took a little charge controller out there to his farm and we plugged the whole thing in. And then I put those, the black and red cables into the little regulator and the lights came on and it all just lit up. And I think it kind of lit something up in me. And I still remember it was that quick and it was that visceral, that moment where I just like, this is it.
Yeah.
This is my mission.
Yeah.
And 25 years later, it's still my mission. I love it.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I talk a lot about sliding door moments to guests. And it might be that moment where you found the passion that if that customer didn't come in, your career might have gone in a different, your life might have gone in a very different way. Have you ever thought about that? If you didn't have that moment where the customer came in, you came up with the idea of that solar to connect that battery, what you could have done? Like, do you think you would have still ended up where you did?
I needed something to channel all of my energy into. Yeah. I'm glad that it was renewables. Yeah. Maybe I would have ended up selling carpet. I mean, who knows? I might have developed a passion for pulling an engine apart and putting it back together. Look, I don't know, Dave, but... Yeah. But all I know was that I was just running around with all this energy and I just needed somewhere to channel it. Yeah. And it was just that moment that I was like, from now on, I thought, I want to change the world. Yeah. I felt that so early in my life. I want to make an impact. Yeah. And I think if you start with a passion for something, then from there, everything just becomes easier. Yeah.
So in the book you mentioned, you met the love of your life, Kelly. You packed your bags, you went to Ireland for a few years. Then you came home and you started a solar business in Gippsland in the shadow of coal-fired power stations in the Latrobe Valley. What was that journey like, starting and scaling Gippsland Solar from the ground up?
Yeah, I reflect a lot on those early years. Yeah. They were the hardest years of my life. There's no doubt about that. For context as well, I was working in the solar industry in Melbourne when Kel and I got back from living overseas. I was working for a company called the Environment Shop, and we were all tree-hugging lefties. We just loved it. We were working in renewables because we wanted to make the world a better place for our children. We were so driven by the purpose, and everybody in that inner green belt of Melbourne felt the same way. Yeah. It was almost like this inevitability of energy transition. This is 2007, mind you, so still fairly early doors. But everybody around me, my entire ecosystem, we all believed we were transitioning, and it was just happening. And so I had this unwavering confidence about the inevitability of transition. 2010, we moved down, as I said, to Gippsland for lifestyle reasons to start a family, and I couldn't find a job in the solar industry because in the Latrobe Valley there were no solar companies, there were no solar customers, and everybody hated it. I mean, back then maybe the power industry would have been the second or third largest employer in the region, and it was baked into the entire identity of the region. And for those that don't understand the psychology of the Latrobe Valley, I mean, this is a region that they just removed an entire town, the township of Yallourn in 1960 or something like that. They just picked up an entire town, houses, parks, schools, everything, and just raised the entire town to access the coal resource that was underneath. It just had this overwhelming social license, and it still does to some extent. So there was no solar companies, and there was no one to work for. And I came home one day, I'd spoken to both of the solar companies within a 100K radius of me and realized that neither of them I wanted to work for because they couldn't grow. And I think Cal was 7 months pregnant, maybe with her first child. We financially, with our pants around our ankles, we
what
were
a great time to start a business.
We were so highly leveraged, and Cal had obviously then stopped working. Yeah. She'd been getting up at 4:45 in the morning, commuting 3 hours each way to go to work in the city. She was just so tough. I told her, I said, I can't find a job. There's just no jobs in this industry in the Valley. And she said, well, if there's no jobs, then there's no competition. So maybe we should start our own solar business. And it was the dumbest idea I've ever heard in my life. 2 years later, still probably thought it was the dumbest idea. But she just gave me that confidence that, you know, as soon as she said it, when there's no jobs, there's no competition, I thought, that's it. You know, this is our moment. Yeah. And so I went home and I paid $50 to create a little logo on a website for Gippsland Solar, put a desk in the third bedroom of our family home, and bought a little laptop. I took out a $6 a week ad in the Merbenorf Times, which is our local newspaper. I think it's got a circulation of about 70 people. Yeah. The little "here's my card" section. That was our marketing budget, and that was the day that Gippsland Solar was born.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love hearing these stories.
Yeah. It's pretty emotional to think about because people didn't hate me at that stage. People just ridiculed me.
Yeah.
You know, the old first they laugh at you and then they fight you and then you win. Well, we were very firmly in the laughing at you stage then. And, you know, those early years there where the council had no respect for anything we were trying to do. Everywhere I went, nobody believed in my vision at all. You know, I think even, 2 or 3 years later, we had just ground along. At one point, I gave up and went and got a job building the local secondary college because we just couldn't make enough money to pay the bills, and we were just so strapped. Yeah. And so that point there, I was like, I said to Cal, we were going into the winter of 2011, and I said to Cal, came home and I said, I can't do this anymore. I need to go and get a job because the feeling of not being able to put food on the tables, and it's a really awful feeling of failure. So I got the job. I spent 3 or 4 months just working for wages, but I was happy to be able to provide, but I was so ashamed of myself that I had this vision, and then I just gave up on it because it was too hard. When I talk to entrepreneurs and startups now, I talk about that, that pragmatism of like, it's okay to be misty-eyed optimist about, I have this vision, I'm going to make it work. But sometimes you just have to stop and take a deep breath and go, okay, I need a dose of reality here.
What was the turnaround point? Like, when did you decide, okay, I'm going to stop doing this job and go back to that job, that business of Gippsland?
Well, going in winter in Gippsland, for those who are familiar with our climate, the sun doesn't come out very often, so people don't think about solar. But I think that the spring of 2011, going into 2012, it was clear there was something happening. The government had just announced some incentives, feed-in tariffs, and then as soon as the sun comes out and the days get longer, the phones started ringing a couple of times. I think I might have sold 1 or 2 systems in September and then 3 or 4 in October, just as a side hustle while I was still doing this job. And I came home and I said to Cal, I said, right, today's the day. I'm going to quit this job. I'm going to go back into the business. I'm going to die on this hill. This is it. I'm going to make it work. I'm going to go down swinging. Quite incredible because within 12 months, I was building new shelving in our shed in the back of our house. Yeah. We probably had, 20 pallets of solar panels out in the rear driveway of our house. So we had a different problem because business all of a sudden became great. But we had all of these panels getting delivered to the back of my tiny little residential block in Melbourne North, and this big reticulated TNT delivery truck was doing a 5-point turn trying to deliver pallets of panels into my garage, and he knocked over my rear fence and flattened the entire fence. And I remember the neighbours being really quite happy about it because they were so annoyed by this truck coming every second day. And then we hit this moment in time where I remember the whole yard was full of stock. I'd left some stainless steel cable ties laying on the ground, and my little boy Lockie was probably 18 months at the time, just starting to walk. And I didn't realise I was on the phone. He came out into the backyard and he was looking for Dad. He fell over and then cut his hand on this cable tie, and then Cal came storming. I saw the look on her face coming up, and I thought, she doesn't look impressed. And I'm just not sure what the rating is of your podcast, if it's G-rated, but she came out and she said, "Get this effing business out of my house."
Oh, that would have been motivation.
It was motivation.
Yeah, okay.
The next day I went to the real estate agent and said, "I need a showroom and a warehouse because my wife's going to leave me."
And so what was the next step?
We opened a showroom in the main street of Melbourne North, a little solar showroom with a 15x4 shed out the back.
Was that big enough to store all the solar panels at that time? Or?
Within 12 months, again, we were just overflowing. The growth trajectory, Dave, once we had those false starts and we finally got that momentum, the period of 2011, 12, 13, it was wild. It was wild. We were really capital constrained. We had no space for anything. We were taking delivery of maybe 10 pallets of gear a week at that stage. And I didn't even have a forklift or even a little walkie stacker. So I was manually unloading every panel out of the truck one by one, placing them on the ground, and then manually loading them into the electricians' trailers in the morning. And then I was going out on the site and doing the installs with them, crawling through roof cavities. And then I'd get the kids to bed at night, and then I'd go and do all of my paperwork at 9 o'clock till 1 o'clock in the morning. So it was amazing how quickly we went from this is hopeless to, gee, I can't even keep up with demand. I wasn't prepared for it. I didn't have the skills. I didn't have the expertise. So I had all these different problems, and this was a better problem to have, but it was still hard.
Yeah. So where to next? Like you get to a point where the business has scaled. Correct me if I'm wrong here. You got a few hundred staff members sort of by the end, but obviously there's a few other steps along the way. You sort of go into sort of the school. You sort of pitch for that. How did you sort of go from that point to then scale to the next level?
I mean, 2013, we employed our first staff member. That was a whole nother level of stress because, even though Barb worked for me, I was still kind of accountable to her. You know what I mean? Like I had a mouth to feed. I had someone who wanted to know where I was all the time, and I wasn't used to it. Yeah. I liked being able to run my own show, and you almost feel like you do work for your staff when you start employing them and you become accountable, which was good discipline actually, because I had to be consistent. I had to be consistent and show up every day for them. And I think that gave me a really healthy work ethic. And consistency in business is more important than motivation, enthusiasm, vision, anything. Yeah. It's the ability to turn up every day and be consistent and to narrow the gap between your best days and your worst days, regardless of external factors, things that are out of your control. And I've always struggled with that, but having employees gives you that grounding. So that was a really important moment for us. And we went from one staff member in 2013. By 2015, the business was absolutely flying, and we opened a showroom in the Latrobe Valley in the middle of coal country. And that was a real shot across the bow to all the Luddites and the coal munchers in the valley. Like we built the first electric vehicle charging station in regional Victoria, in the valley. And I bought a Tesla Model S. I put a big sticker on it, powered by renewable energy. And it was just like a red flag to a bull. People were actually quite angry, like, how dare you come in here and do this in our region? It's almost like that. You know that on The Simpsons, there's the picture of Homer riding the donkey through the cake, and there's the thing that says, "Local man ruins everything."
That was going to be you.
Yeah. Cal actually said to me at the time, you should call the book "Local Man Ruins Everything." I didn't want to get sued by the editors of the producers of The Simpsons, but that was how people felt. How dare you? And the other problem I had was that now we had enjoyed success and we were achieving all the things that we wanted, but people weren't coming with us on the journey. And I'd convinced myself that was because we were just disrupting. We were trying to, change the status quo, and people were just upset because they can't handle change. The actual reality is that I still had my head firmly planted up my backside. It took me a long time to realize that my unwavering belief in where we were going had turned into arrogance or belligerence or whatever you want to call it. But I was just like, we are transitioning. I don't care if you agree, come with us or get out of the way. It took me a long time to realize that doesn't work in regions that are going through transition. It doesn't work. So I spent a bit more time understanding why people felt a certain way. I toured the power stations. I spoke to my friends who were working in the power stations. I started to see things through their lens. And then I started realizing that my attitude and all of our messaging, everything we were doing was wrong. It was good for growing a business, but it was wrong for bringing a region on the transition journey. And so I remember very clearly the day that we decided to stop putting any posts up about renewable energy or net zero or climate change or any of those environmental factors that drove me from day one. And the first day that we put up a post of a new apprentice collecting their high-vis gear on day one of a new career in renewable energy, everyone's just like, yeah, jobs. We love jobs. You know, and then the council got in touch and said, hey, we love your post. We'd like to talk to you about what you're doing. Yeah. Can we give you some support to help grow this business? And the Latrobe City Council, who were one of my biggest detractors, frankly, at the time, in the end gave us some support to get a business coach. And they were actually one of the catalysts for us to grow a business in the Latrobe Valley.
We hope you're enjoying this episode of Powering Your Career. Clicking follow or subscribe will allow you to stay up to date with all future content. Leaving a review helps others find this podcast. And for more information on West Recruitment and how we can help, please visit us at westrecruitment.com.au. So talking about things that really worked, and I joked at the start around Andy from Gippsland Solar, you got a call from a marketing guy out of the blue who came to you with this crazy idea, and I love this part of your story. Can you run the audience through getting that call and the whole marketing idea of where Andy from Gippsland Solar came from?
Yeah, so it was nice being able to say that. I hadn't said Andy from Gippsland Solar for a long time, yeah. Stu, our marketing guy, he just cold called me one day, walked in the door, and he said, I've seen your business around. I really respect what you're trying to do. He said, but I think you got the messaging all wrong. You know, would you be interested in doing a marketing campaign? I said, I really like the cut of his jib. So I said, yeah, do some work on it and come back and tell me what you think. And he came back 2 weeks later and he came back with his amazing proposal. He looked at the whole market and he realized that by 2013-14 that our competitors were all the big end of town. Back then there was a company called True Value Solar who had maybe 500,000 systems installed around the country, major sponsor of the Essendon Footy Club, big companies, buying power, scale, but all of our competitors were trying to focus on the fact they were really big, and that was their pitch. And he said, you know, I think that your pitch is you need to be the local face, the local alternative to the big solar companies. And so he said, I think we need to build a campaign called Andy from Gippsland Solar. So you're not calling Gippsland Solar, you're calling Andy because you can trust him. And if he does the wrong thing by you, he'll be coaching your kid's footy team, or you'll see him at the IGA supermarket or whatever. And he's a face you can trust because he's in the community and he can't be anonymous. And so this whole thing about being the local alternative to big solar companies, it just really cut through. And all of a sudden, people were prepared to pay twice as much to go with us for similar product because they trusted that we'd do the right thing by them. And I just think that running a business, especially in regional areas, like it's so powerful.
Yeah.
People often complain about the small town syndrome when you can't be anonymous and everyone's in your face all the time and the claustrophobic nature of running a business in a small town. Yeah. But if you get it right, it's super powerful. Yeah. And so we built our business off the back of Andy from Gippsland Solar, which it was great for business, Dave, I can tell you that. But can you imagine like this ad, you know, for anyone that lives in Victoria, I'm not sure if it was a national ad, but there's a guy called Frank Walker from National Tiles. Hello, Frank Walker from National Tiles.
And I always think of you now when I hear that ad.
Thanks, Dave.
I think about Frank, I think about Andy.
So one of my mates said, you are the Frank Walker of Gippsland. And so this Andy from Gippsland Solar thing, it just started to haunt me. Like I was running back into the pack playing footy on a Saturday up at Hill End. And these under-18s from Hill End are sitting there and they go, you're stuffed, Andy from Gippsland Solar. You're going to get it, Andy from Gippsland Solar. And I'll be walking down the street and someone yell it across the road, hi, Andy from Gippsland Solar here. And I was just like, oh, leave me alone.
Oh, that is gold. So you get to a point where in 2009, you end up selling your business to RACV. Where'd you get the business up to prior to that? And what did that process look like? How did the sale end up coming about?
2015 was that formative moment that we spoke about. So we installed an EV charging station. We purchased a Tesla. We really got into the commercial solar space in a big way. And so all of a sudden we found that, Gippsland's about the size of Switzerland, about 40,000 square kilometres. So we thought, hence the name Gippsland Solar, that would be sufficient for our business in terms of the geographical footprint. And all of a sudden we found that we started growing our workforce and employing electricians. And then we started acquiring electrical contracting businesses that were looking to, get off the tools, or they just wanted a job. So we'd acquired their company with all their staff. So by the end of it, 2016, 17, we had 50 or 60 staff. And all of a sudden, Gippsland almost wasn't big enough to feed the mouths every day and put food on the table and pay their wages. So in the end, we targeted a really strategically important commercial job, which was Camberwell Grammar in Melbourne. It was the biggest installation on a school in the country at the time. And we were so far out of our depth on that job. Like, I can't tell you. And we were up against some big energy retailers, some multi-billion-dollar energy companies trying to win that job. And we just played the little guy that really wanted it more than the rest. And we managed to, the David versus Goliath story, we managed to win that job and knocked it out of the park. Our team was incredible. And then from there, we became the go-to company for private schools in the country. So we expanded into Melbourne. In 2018, we opened a showroom. 2019, we started winning jobs up the east coast of Australia. And I was like, how did Gippsland Solar manage to have installers all over the country? Like, it was more than I'd ever imagined, more than I'd ever expected. And it just got to the point where it was almost too big, actually. And I remember my business coach at the time said, there's nothing you can do about this. You've got a tiger by the tail with this business.
That is so cool.
And it wants to grow. Yeah. So, it was amazing. I think the other important elements of that too was, at this point, 2018, pretty much on paper, we'd achieved everything we'd ever. If I'd drawn a business plan 2010 in my third bedroom, it wouldn't even have looked anything like this. But there's a downside to that success for me, and that was that, every day, month after month, year after year, I'd been going back to the well and digging deep and trying to be resilient and tough and push through the other side of the challenges I was facing. People hated me and abusing me in the street. So not just normal growing a business challenge, but also trying to be a change maker in a region. And I hadn't realized how much of an impact that was having. And so I was able to push through. But it's interesting because 2018, when we enjoyed all this success and I was able to finally take my first proper break because I was just tired. I was running on fumes for years. And then it's like getting sick when you go on holiday for the first time in years, is that when I finally took a big break, all of a sudden I just went, oh, actually, I'm kind of tired. Yeah. And in the end, that holiday that I took, that break, it triggered just a massive mental and physical breakdown. I completely fell apart. It was the last night of holidays, and I suddenly realized that I had to turn my emails back on. I was thinking about the staff member I had to get rid of, the challenges with a job, whatever it may be, and it all started to swirl around in my head, and I just had an almighty breakdown and burst into tears on the floor. And then I got back to Australia, and every third or fourth night I'd have a panic attack, and then every second night, and then 2 a day. And then the kids started coming into the bedroom and seeing me laying on the floor, convulsing with sweat pouring off me, and it was really ugly. Yeah. I'd got to a point where I had pushed myself way too hard, and that proverbial elastic band had finally snapped. And so when I started to recover, I actually couldn't work for 6 months because I was
So the team obviously stepped up.
Oh, incredible. I messaged 3 or 4 of my closest team members, the ones that run the business, and I just opened up. I said, look, this is what's happening. I don't know when I'm going to be back, but it's going to be a while.
Had you spoken to them about any of the challenges you were facing at that time, or being the Aussie bloke, you kept it in?
No, I didn't. No. Yeah. I was barely even talking to Kelly about it, to be honest, because I think maybe it wasn't my brand. Maybe I was the positivity guy. I was out there talking about the future of energy and sunshine, and I just had this personal brand that was built around positivity. And that brand didn't have room for a mental breakdown. So I paid the price for that. So in the end, I opened up to my team and I said, look, it's going to be a while. I don't know when I'm going to be back, but it's not going to be anytime soon. And they just said, you look after yourself. We've got this. Turn your phone off. Focus on yourself. I can't tell you how grateful I am to them for just stepping up. But by this stage, unfortunately, I realized, too late to some extent, that all the business was still residing completely in my head. And maybe it goes back to the Andy from Gippsland Solar building the business around me, where I had to be the guy. I had to be involved in everything. No, I want to talk to Andy, and I just wasn't prepared to let that go. I convinced myself at the start it was because that was what the business needed.
Yeah.
But in the end, it was purely just about ego, and it was just addictive.
But I think also when you're running your own business, no one necessarily tells you what you should be doing, what you shouldn't be doing. And I look back as a business owner myself, and I think one of the best things I ever did, and I know you end up getting a business coach sort of later on in your career, was getting someone who can give you that advice, because you can go through as a business owner, whether you're an individual or you've got a business partner, and if someone else isn't giving you the advice of either taking a break or delegating, or you're taking on too much yourself, you don't necessarily know, because you can get caught up with everything you're doing as a business owner.
Yeah, you do. And you have to be there for people all the time.
Yeah.
Everyone needs you all the time, like all the time. And then you get home and then your kids need you all the time. Like, it's just like, I love my family, I love my staff, but I just wish someone wouldn't need me for a day.
Yeah.
And I was so used to having to be there to be the strong, stoic figure to support them that I wasn't thinking about who could support me. Yeah. And I didn't want to bring this home to Kel. Like, Kel's she was working 4 days a week. We had 3 kids. She had her own professional hopes and dreams, and I didn't want to be putting this on her. I can't talk to my staff about it. I didn't have an outlet. It was a very lonely feeling. And maybe that contributed to my downfall as well, because I was just internalizing this, trying to be tough for everyone else, but not getting the support I needed. And so along all the lessons I've learned along the way, I think that's the most important one, is you've got to have a wolf pack around you that you can share things with to lighten that burden sometimes.
Yeah. So in the book, you say that you're doing a contract for RACV, doing some work, and then you get a call from one of the execs for a meeting with RACV. Run me through that moment of your life.
You did ask me about the RACV story, and I went on a bit of a tangent there. So
hey, that's my job to bring it back.
That's right. I know.
That's what I do.
You're very good at this job, Dave.
I've done one or two of these before.
I can tell. Okay, so to continue the story, thank you, Dave.
Pleasure.
Once I got back into the business, we made a commitment to ourselves, Kelly and I, that we would build structures and systems and actually get this business out of my head and have proper documentation and build something really sustainable. At that exact moment in time, we were asked to tender for the RACV resorts, to put solar across all their resorts and offices. It's about 3 megawatts worth of solar. It was a huge contract, far and away the biggest we'd ever done. We were very fortunate in being, in fact, we weren't even shortlisted for it. I remember you talk about moments in time, those sliding doors moments. I was driving past the RACV resort in Inverloch. There's an EV charger there. And I happened to running out of charge, and so I had to pop in for 20 minutes just to give my car a top up. As I was plugging my car in, I looked over at the roof and I saw a guy in high vis up on the roof. I thought, is that a solar installer? I was like, nah, it's probably just a mechanical services guy working on the aircon, a roofing contractor, whatever. So I didn't think too much of it, but that curiosity starts to get to you. So I did a lap around the car park, and then there was another solar installation vehicle there. I was like, you little buggers, they are putting solar on the roof. So I rang someone that I knew at RACV from my earlier years, and I said, are you doing solar? And he said, no, not that I heard of. And he anyway made some phone calls, and he comes back and he goes, we are installing solar. He goes, yeah, we're putting solar across all the resorts. I had no idea. Managed to convince him to get us onto that shortlist. They gave us an extension of time. And then we were eventually successful in winning the rollout of solar across all their resorts. So just from that one moment where I happened to see that person on the roof, through all of that, in the end, we won the contract. We were halfway through. The CEO then calls me in for a meeting and then says, hey, we're looking to expand into energy. It's not happening as fast as we'd like. We want to acquire the best solar company in the industry, and everyone tells me that's you.
Wow.
Would you be interested in selling your business to RACV? And I was like, hell yes. Hell yes, I would.
Went to my side.
Yeah.
Did you play hard to get, or you just went,
No, I didn't.
So you probably could have done that a little bit better in terms of negotiation. Or?
Yeah. This is why I'm not a poker player for a living, Dave, because, you can imagine at that time the world of pain that I was in. And I was still, even though on paper my life looked fantastic, if you trawl through my LinkedIn from 2018-19, I paint this wonderful view of the world, living the dream. But my life was a bin fire still. And, I'd be running laps of the golf course at 2:00 in the morning in peak of Windsor, bawling my eyes out, running until I literally collapse into a heap on the fairway. from a panic attack. So it was just this constant battle. And then the day that they said, would you be interested in selling a business to RACV? As I wrote about in the book, it was like I was bobbing around in the ocean with water smacking me in the face, and then someone's just come out and thrown me a life raft and said, jump on.
Yeah.
So that's why I wasn't playing very hard to get, because I was just, my soul was tired.
Yeah.
It was the right company at the right time. And I just can't believe the fortune of them coming along at the time that they did, but also the decisions we made to create our own luck, I think plays a role too. I just couldn't believe that someone of RACV's size and scale and reputation would see something valuable in a business that started in a third bedroom in North in 2010.
I bet you that wasn't on the business plan when you were writing it up.
No, it wasn't.
Great outcome in the end,
But there's something in that I talk to entrepreneurs and startups about, that all I ever wanted to do was build a brand that was so credible and so trusted that people felt a connection to. I just wanted to do the right thing by people at every opportunity, every single time I had opportunity to. And if you do that, one day RACV, who care more about brand than almost anyone I've ever known, says there is something about that brand that is actually valuable to RACV. Yeah. And I don't even understand how we got from A to B there, from that business, with a $6 ad in the Melbourne North Times, but we just tried to do the right thing by people, and we employed people that wanted to do the right thing by people as well. Yeah, and fortunately, again, we talk about fortune, sold the business to RACV, and they acquired 100% of Gippsland Solar, and we got paid 2 weeks before COVID just sent the world into an absolute tailspin. I think we managed to get on at the start of the sort of solar boom, and not saying it was the end, because it's still flying at the moment, but exiting the business 2 weeks before COVID is just a stroke of absolute fortune.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Looking back, in hindsight, it's a wonderful thing. What's the smartest decision you made that helped you drive the success of Gippsland Solar? And on the flip side, if you could do one thing differently, knowing what you know now, what would it be?
Ooh, gee. These are big questions, Dave.
They are.
These are big questions. I love my team and everyone that we put in the business that just bled for Gippsland Solar. But I would say, I think my best decision was to bring a business coach in 2015. And I say that because I was so belligerent about my own ability to run a solar company. People had told me you need a business coach. And I just thought, how is some guy who's never run a solar company going to tell me how to run a solar company? Yeah. I just didn't believe that they could teach me anything. But when I did bring the right person in and taught me about the values of starting a business and how those values and those fundamental principles are so similar across every business, that elevated my thinking and it got me thinking bigger picture. And until then, I hadn't realized it was a hole in my professional life that they filled. So whether it's a mentor or a business coach or just a confidant, you have to have someone that allows you to step out of your business and to look at it from above and to see the bigger picture. Because otherwise you're in it every day and you just can't see, where you're trying to get to. If there's one thing I do differently, I probably would have gone and sought some mental health help a little bit earlier.
I thought that was going to be the answer, but
But then even that, it's just part of the journey. Yeah. Like it's almost, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but it's hard to have regrets when it's all part of the journey. Yeah. And the lessons that I've learned and the person I am as I sit here today is largely a result of me having had a complete breakdown, and learn a lot of lessons about how to look after myself. And if there's one thing that I love about life, it's when you make a big mistake like that in your own life and you can use that as fuel to help make other people's lives better. Yeah. So the reason I wrote the book mostly is because I just love sharing my story. And when I was well enough to talk about my journey and my personal downfall and rebuild, I got up at a conference and spoke in front of 200 or 300 people about this in 2021. And as I was talking, I started to get a little bit wobbly. The tears started to roll down my cheek and I just choked up and I couldn't finish what I was saying, and I stumbled through the rest of it, and I just thought that I'd completely stuffed it up. And then some big old Sparky from country Queensland just come up and just wrapped his arms around me and gave me a big hug. And he said, I'm going to go and talk to someone. And he'd been dealing with a lot of battles. Yep. And then he said to me, I'm going to go and talk to someone. And he goes, I just want to say thanks. And he had a little bit of a tear in his eye and I had a bit of a tear. And I just thought, his life now will be invariably better for the decision he's just made off the back of hearing me talk about my own challenges. And like that's not just business, Dave. Like that's life. Yeah. That's life. Like we should all exist to make other people's lives richer. Yeah. And I just love it.
That's the thing I think I loved about reading your book. I think you've got an amazing story, and you're so honest in so many elements of life and what you share. I do want to say kudos to you, because not everyone can, from a career perspective, go from installing solar on roofs, being roof cavities, to then running a business that's turning over millions of dollars. You've got a team of 300 odd. Like, that's a big transition over that period of time. And obviously you must have gone through huge amounts of growth in terms of the individual. But I'm going to say, a great book. Anyone who wants to grab it, definitely grab it. On the mental health piece, and it's one of the topics I discuss on this podcast all the time, you mentioned the challenges you had. How has that influenced what mental health, wellness and balance looks like for you as Andy McCarthy sitting in front of me today? How do you look after your own? What does it mean to you, and how do you help support other people?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I feel like it's now my second mission.
Yeah.
You know, my first mission was to accelerate this, renewable energy transition, but even more important mission for me now is just to try and use my mistakes and my challenges to help lift others up, as I said before. I think it's about, for me, recognizing when I'm starting to get, when my needle's going from a 3 out of 10 to a 6 or a 7.
What's a sign for you?
I can feel within myself, like I start to get, butterflies in the stomach occasionally, or I have a couple of nights of broken sleep, and I can just feel my own energy. I'm starting to get more tense, and I'm starting to get on a bit of an edge. And at that moment, I used to just say to myself, I have to push through. I have to be resilient. Like, we teach, in society that resilience is the most important thing, which it is. But there's a balance between that and pushing yourself over the edge. And now I understand when I'm getting to that point. And even if I have meetings booked in my calendar for the next day, some nights I'll just be like, I'm at a point where I have to just clear my calendar, and I have to just go into nature and spend the day, turn my phone off, take my dog for a walk, go and have a nap, whatever it may be. Nothing is a higher priority than that. And having the confidence within yourself to be able to just check out and say, I need to do this for me, it's so important. Like, it's, and I'll never make a decision in my life professionally that compromises my own well-being and compromises my ability to be a good husband and father, because I sacrificed all of those things for so long, because all I wanted to do was run a business that would change the world and just, and just make a big impact. But I didn't care about being the best husband or father I could be. I didn't care about my own health and well-being. I neglected everything, and I'll never do that again.
Yeah. Must be cool for the people around you, for you showing that to your boys, to Kelly, to staff members, all those sort of things.
I think there's a strength in vulnerability that a lot of men don't quite get. And I must admit, I'm someone that feels they're very comfortable sitting here talking to, thousands of people about my shortcomings. I think that my 3 boys will benefit from seeing that.
Yeah.
As ugly as it was, I still remember a moment where I was sitting on the couch in the middle of my depths of despair, and just started crying. Like, just tears started pouring down my cheeks. And then my boy Charlie was 6 years old at the time, and I can't imagine how that must have felt for him.
Yeah.
Like, he got up, he was having a sandwich, and he got up out of the chair and he walked over to the couch and he just placed a hand on my shoulder and he said, "Are you okay, Dad?" I was like, wow, and that made me feel worse. Yeah. But, this 6-year-old boy, they look up at this big towering father figure, and he's just crying on the couch.
But I think it's important for the kids. So, like, I asked you earlier about your outlet. For me, whilst I'm naturally an introvert, I do come across as an extrovert, but the times where I can see myself going into a rabbit hole is when I don't answer that phone call, when I don't want to see friends or family, and I can see that sort of building up. My probably outlet, and sometimes I go a little bit too far, where I will just cry at a random time. I'll walk in the house, I'll see my wife, and I will just cry, and my boys will come up, and I'm quite honest just to say what is happening. It is an outlet. I feel okay, but I think, and I talk to my 2 boys about that all the time, that it's okay to cry, it's okay to talk, it's okay to be honest in terms of how you're feeling. We do a Laps for Life challenge each year, me and my boys, where we swim a whole lot of laps in a swimming pool, which is great for my mental health. But on the way to the pool each time, I'll talk to the boys around talking up, focusing on their mental health and wellness, checking in on their mates. And I think it is just so important for men, for people to be able to speak about this, whether it be in a work, on a podcast, in front of your family, because then it sort of removes the barriers to other people.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case. And I think it's really it's impossible to overstate how much we're modeling our behaviors for our children. Whether we like it or not, everything we do, they're learning the difference between what it means to be a good human being. And, that day when Charlie said, "Are you okay, Dad?" And I said, "Sometimes Dad just gets upset."
Yeah.
That's what happens. And I feel like that there's a real strength in that he will learn that's what strong people do. But I also think that I've now changed my friendship network as well to people that I can be open with. And I don't have as many surface level friendships anymore, but the ones that I do have are really quite deep.
I was just about to say they get deeper as you get older. Yeah.
There's a real risk here for psychologists everywhere because, a 40-year-old man like me is probably their target customer. And if we can start talking to each other, we're going to put them out of business.
But I always say to my mates, we have to catch up for mental health nights. And the mental health nights might be, I don't know, go for a walk, maybe a beer, watching football. But you do sit there and you talk and you feel a hell of a lot better. And you might sit there and it might be a catch-up, but there's bound to be one of the 5 mates around there who talks more than usual because they're having a shitty week or there's something in their life that is creating an extra pressure on them. It's just a group of guys catching up, but you do feel better at the end of it.
Yeah, it's not actually the purpose of it, but it's the outcome.
Yeah, exactly.
I just love that the connection to fellow humans. There's a beauty in connection in sharing energy with other human beings. It's easy for me to say because I'm naturally an extrovert. And I get that it's not as easy for others, but I just love, I just want to meet everyone. I want to hear their stories. I want to tell my story. And I just want to share energy with all of my fellow humans because there's so much value to be gained and it all makes us feel more connected as a society. And I feel like that's lacking a lot in this world.
Yeah.
We're becoming so combative and so angry and so stressed and disconnected. And there has to be room for that connection. I don't know how we fix it, but we've got to address it.
Yeah. So, Andy, you're clearly someone who lives and breathes energy, not just in your work, but in your writing, your community work. What do you love most about the energy industry and why should someone consider a career in energy today?
I just think it is the most wonderful mission and purpose that you could ever ask for. And you and I had this conversation offline where I said, I don't understand myself. I know everyone's different, but I don't understand how you can go to work every day and do something that doesn't really light a fire under you and just make you want to jump out of bed and go and run through brick walls. Yeah. That's what energy does for me. I think about the pure simplicity and the magic of just of powering everything everywhere from the sun, from this abundant resource of putting solar panels out there with, almost no maintenance, no moving parts, silent, passive, compared to the way we've always done things of, digging up coal and putting it, burning it and then creating steam to move it to. It's just one of those things that in 50 years' time, when we have completed this transition and the last coal-fired power station closes, we'll be like, is that really how we used to produce energy? Yeah. It just doesn't, it's like all these things. Once you stop doing them, you're like, wow, that's kind of crazy. Yeah. And that's hard because, you live in the Latrobe Valley and they go, wind turbines, they're a blight on the landscape. And I'm like, hang on a minute. You're driving past a 50 square kilometre hole in the ground. You have done for decades, and that's perfectly acceptable. And then, you have the mine fire where dozens of people indirectly were killed from the impact on air quality and no one could leave their homes for a month. And it's just, for me, it's the inevitability of transition and the opportunities that creates. Yeah. So I say in the Valley, we can have the best of both worlds. We still have jobs in traditional generation for as long as possible. But then we're creating the jobs of today and tomorrow, and we're transitioning these workers. There's far, far more jobs in renewable energy than there is in traditional generation. Yeah.
So talking about the transition, in your view, what does Australia need to get right to make the transition successful? What do we need to avoid? And how do you think we're tracking?
I think around the world, people look at Australia as they say, a postcard from the future because they see all the wonderful success we've had with rooftop solar. But I think that the reality is far more complex in Australia. When people talk about the 4 million houses with rooftop solar, I think about the 1.25 million houses with rooftop solar that were installed by a company that's no longer in business. That's what I think about. So I worry about all those people that have been left high and dry because, we've created this boom and bust, the solar coaster, we call it, from overly generous incentives, which are just pulled with no warning. And it's not a way to create a sustainable industry. I understand the best of intentions. I worry that we're doing it again now with the home battery rebate as well. everyone's running around saying how good's this, and then the music will stop at one point, and then companies will be left with huge big warehouses full of stock and heaps of staff and going, gee, we need to pull our workforce back. I worry about the sustainability, pardon the pun, of what we're building at the moment. And we've been so focused in Australia on creating more supply. It's sexy to have more rebates and more feed-in tariffs and whatever. Voters love it.
Yeah.
But I worry that we're actually not doing the real work we need to do, which is on the supply. If we spent the amount of money that we're putting into the home battery subsidies and we spent a portion of that on creating more skilled workers, creating more blue and white collar, going into schools and encouraging more students to get into renewable energy. And when I say working in renewable energy, they can be a store person, they can be a drone pilot, they could be there's a concreter in the Latrobe Valley. He runs a concreting business and all he does is pour concrete slabs for wind turbines and for commercial battery installations. So the amount of jobs in renewables is far broader than anyone thinks. But I just worry that we're missing out on this huge opportunity. And, maybe I think about it through a Latrobe Valley lens because I see the jobs disappearing. I saw 800 jobs go when Hazelwood Power Station closed. And I see the jobs we could be creating within the energy transition. And we're just missing some of this really low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
So I just encourage the policymakers and the leaders out there to think about what we're doing to create more skills and create more opportunities for people, because at the moment we're importing all this stuff that we really should be doing in Australia. Oh. It's a very, it's a huge opportunity for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So for someone looking to build a long-term career in energy, what skills or mindsets do you think are going to matter most? And for those already mid-career, what should they be learning or unlearning from a skill or a development perspective in your mind?
I'll be honest, I always come back to your network is your net worth.
Yep.
As someone who left school at 15, I don't think I've passed any tests in my life other than a driver's license. Even that, I think I had 2 goes at. So I don't have any tickets and I don't have any qualifications or anything. And so for me to be able to achieve what I did, I think anyone can achieve anything, because what I did do was I was very, very keen on building my network. I just wanted to meet every single person in the industry. I wanted to understand who they are and how they fit into the ecosystem. And so I think, for me, it was on LinkedIn. I would be sending messages to people, reaching out all the time saying, I've admired everything you've done in the industry. I'd love to catch up for a coffee, over and over again. And there would be hundreds of messages that no one ever replied to. Just dust myself off and just going to reach out to the next person. And then when I went to conferences, like I'm now at the stage where I go to a conference, we've got one on in Sydney at the moment. And if I go into a networking function tonight, if there's 200 people in the room, I probably know 160 of them. So I make a beeline for the 40 people that I don't know. And I want to understand who they are and what they do and how they fit in. Because if you just do that and you continually open doors and just have a look what's behind them in life and build connections, it's amazing the way that opportunity just presents itself. Yeah. So that's really encouraging, I think. Not that I would ever talk down the need for good education and qualifications. Obviously, you need to have them. But if that's not your thing and you don't feel like you have the skills or the acumen or whatever it may be, then there's a whole world of opportunity that exists for people like you as well. Yeah,
but that's the thing. I think so many people get scared about sending that message to LinkedIn. And if you don't send it, you'll never know.
Yep.
I think it's best to reach out, ask the question. Yep. I still love that story you're saying about the RACV, seeing the person on the roof. Now, you could have very quickly or very easily driven past that side of that point, but you did the lap of the block.
Yep.
You asked what they were doing, and obviously it built a huge amount of success. I say to people all the time, if you don't send that message, you'll never potentially get that meeting. So you can get so caught up in your own head. What happens if they say no? What happens if they say no? What happens if they say yes?
Yep, absolutely.
It could be that sliding door moment that has a huge influence in your career or your life. So, Andy, last question. When we last caught up, we spoke a lot about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I know it's something you are deeply passionate about. Why is D&I so important to you personally and to the businesses that you lead, and also for the wider energy industry?
I'm really proud of the progress that we've made as an industry, I have to say, over the last 3 to 4 years. There's still a long way to go. I confess to being part of the problem myself because I didn't realize that the industry had an issue. I remember in 2017, one of my friends who's a very influential leader in the industry, she was the CEO of a large company in the sector. And I remember she came to me at the All Energy conference and we had a bit of a chat. And then she wandered off to go and chat to someone else. She came back about half an hour. I was like, oh, long time no see. And she's like, honestly, she goes, I just come here because this is my safe place. I said, what do you mean safe place? She goes, I just feel comfortable hanging out with you. And I didn't realize at the time what it would have been like to be a strong, influential female leader in this industry. It wasn't anything that you can put your finger on sometimes. It was an unconscious energy. There was an alpha energy in this industry that was really quite insidious that I actually didn't even realize there was a problem with. And that took her to make me realize that actually it's a very blokey culture and that we're not actually very diverse at all. And I always come back to that 14-year-old Andy in high school that just didn't fit in anywhere and felt out of place and lonely. And I just think that was what it would have been like for women trying to forge their way in renewables back in 2015-16. And so I'm so pleased now when I go to conferences and there's a really healthy gender balance and people feel comfortable being in that room, that means that we're really getting somewhere as an industry, because we talk about sustainability. Well, if we're only ever appealing to half of the population, it's not a sustainable industry. You know, like the women that I employed in our business, we did a lot of work on women in renewables. Some of my employees were the founders of Australian Women in Solar Energy. I just look at the work that they have done to mentor and support other women to come through and make their way in this industry and making that pathway easier. It was the same with Indigenous apprentices too. We brought one of the first Indigenous apprentices through our business, and he had a really tough time finding his way and integrating into our industry. And then he mentored 2 more Indigenous kids, apprentices that came through, and their journey was much easier because of the lessons that he learned. And he now goes off to fireside chats with other Indigenous groups and convinces them to get into renewables. He's done a lot of work with the federal government now as one of the leaders of Faces of Net Zero. So I see all of these things happening in this wonderful progress. And I look forward to a day where it's no longer an Indigenous apprentice or a female apprentice. It's just an apprentice. Yeah. It needs to be omnipresent and not a big deal anymore. And that's where I think that we can get to.
Yeah. Andy, I've absolutely loved our chat. Thanks so much for sitting down with me and being so honest, upfront, and sort of sharing your story. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Powering Your Career with David Smith. Join me next time as we talk to energy leaders to provide you valuable perspectives on career development, leadership, navigating the energy transition, and strategies for managing mental health and wellness in a high-pressure industry. If you are enjoying this series, please click follow or subscribe for further episodes. And leaving a review or a comment helps others find this podcast. Also, if our team can assist you with any recruitment requirements or you are keen to discuss your career journey, please reach out to West Energy or West Recruitment at westrecruitment.com.au. Thanks.